Hi everyone, Agnes here, and welcome to another interview discussion. Today it is with Alex, and he is very lucky to be in Greece. Hi Alex.
Hey there, how are you?
Thank you for coming to join us, and we've got a really good topic today, which I think will interest a lot of the viewers on my channel, which is about doing more deeper work on issues that are handbraking people in relationships and with trauma. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're going to share with us today?
I'll give a very small background and then people can go to my website and get the larger background. But my background has been a lifelong curiosity about the inner mechanics of being human, right? And that started at a really early age. And that led me on to a journey of exploring East-West psychology, East-West spirituality, and the dialogue and the intersection between the two. And my work is basically a holistic approach to the human being, integrating East-West. Mm-hmm. And if I could say, there's like four streams: Jungian psychoanalysis, trauma work, like EMDR, and somatic experiencing, and mindfulness meditation kind of work, right? So it's these four streams, as I call them, for me, have been integrated in a kind of in a seamless, effortless way with people. So this is what I do every single day.
Okay. Well, I think your knowledge base is going to be really valuable for the people that come to this channel, which is people that have issues with anxiety, with abandonment trauma, and with breakups in relationships. So can I start with EMDR?
Sure. So if we went back 25 years back before EMDR, and one would say, what is the way to deal with trauma? Trauma was really starting to pick up after the wars, especially World War II, and of course Vietnam. Because before that, there was not really a much understanding of trauma in the field of psychology, because psychology is also quite young, right? So we would see people and they would be having symptoms, mood dysregulation, anxiety, depression, all sorts of acting out. And we would say, based on where you were born in the world, it would be, your humors were off balance, or you had some possessions, or, whatever was the flavor at the time, right? But in the 1900s, that started to change with the understanding and study of war veterans. That's how it began, because there was a pattern that started to appear with war veterans that became known as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And the treatment for that varied for a long time. And, medication was also growing at the same time. So we had the burgeoning field of psychiatry trying to manage the symptoms, and the burgeoning field of psychotherapy trying to deal with that with, let's say, cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, and to limited degrees effective. And so 25 years ago, EMDR, Frances Shapiro is the name of the woman who kind of really broke the field, and it was by accident. She was walking outside. The story goes that she was walking in the woods, and she was kind of feeling anxious. And she noticed that after some time of walking, that her anxiety went away, and she didn't really understand why. And she backtracked, and an insight came to her that as she was walking, she was looking left and right, what we call bilateral movement of the eyes, right? And she started to do research into the field of what is there about bilateral movement of the eyes that was helping her with anxiety. There was not much written. And so she threw herself into the study. And over 25 years, a lot of study and now science and MRIs are starting to look at what this EMDR, let me just say what EMDR stands for, first of all. It means eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's the fancy term for that, right? So it's a method that uses what's called bilateral motion, either of the eyes, of hearing, of tapping, right? So anything that has to do with bilateral movements. What the bilateral movement does, it helps to work with the trauma. And this is gets a little bit complex with neuropsychology and neurobiology. So I need to back up a little bit to do that to help understand how the method works. Okay, so I'll introduce that. Bear with me here. So we are neurobiological creatures, okay? And so we are basically a nervous system walking around. And that nervous system is interfacing between the inner world and the outer world. And that's what the nervous system is doing with the brain as the processing center. So being human, there is no way to escape not being conditioned by your environment and by the people in it. There's no way. We are conditional beings. That's what it is. Without the conditioning, we couldn't survive. So we need conditioning to help us go through life, naming things, managing our emotions, interacting with other people. So the nervous system and the brain basically are helping us do that in order so that we can eat, procreate, build shelter, and then the higher order of the frontal lobe of creating things and so forth, right? So now we have a deeper understanding that trauma, and we often have associated trauma with like the big traumas, and now I say being human is traumatic. And to change that into a more functional sentence, I say being human, there's no way to avoid the contractions and limitations that go into the nervous system that later show up as anxieties and depressions and all the issues that we would see in modern time. There's just no escape, right? Now, there's a range. I can grow up in a family that is very harmful and damaging to my nervous system and my sense of self. And then I can grow up in a family where that's limited, okay? So we have a really wide range of impact on that. So what happens in this range? And I use this example all the time, so I'll just use it again. A little girl is in the kitchen with her father and mother cooking, and the little girl spills something. And the father turns around and says, "You're so stupid." In that moment, something happens in that little girl that we're all familiar with, right? To varying degrees. Maybe once for some of us, maybe that's how we grew up for a long time. So what happens in that little girl? First is she'll probably stop breathing for a second or two or longer. So her nervous system will have an immediate reaction to that as harmful, invasion, painful attack, right? So it won't be cognitive at first. It will be immediately somatic. This is why the field of somatic psychotherapy is so powerful. So the first experience is somatic, and you can feel it'll be a shutting down, right? Her body will shut down. It may actually later on show up in a particular way, like for example, maybe hunched over shoulders, or if the father maybe came to her and raised his hand, she may have a particular a rotation in her body that mimics the trauma, right? So the body keeps the score, as the book by Bessel van der Kolk says. So the body will keep the score of what happens. Emotions and thoughts come along with that, okay? So the emotion will be, let's say, fear, anger, hurt. Thoughts will be both ranging about the parent and more so about self. Parent could be parent is a horrible person and they're wrong. Parent is right and I'm bad. So we get a mixture of internal dialogues, frameworks that occur in that particular moment. And that's due to just temperament and previous experiences. No one can say from where one child says that parent is the one to blame and another child says I'm to blame. And I can't tell you what causes the two, right? So, so those three things happen: somatic, emotional, and cognitive get linked into that. And so then that child walks away from that experience. They will remember that on the visual and then on the unconscious. And it's in the unconscious then that walks around with them. And what happens is in that unconscious, it starts to generalize itself. And it'll generalize itself then with other people. It won't just be with dad. It'll be with other human beings where the perception may be that they may be mean to me. Then it's a boss, then it's a partner, then it's with friends, right? So it gets generalized. So the issue with trauma is that it starts to generalize itself all across. All right. And what do we feel? Anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression are the symptoms of these kind of traumatic contractions, right? And what's the most painful part of that traumatic contraction is the way that the child experiences themselves and the language that they use to define themselves. It must be me. I am the problem. It's my fault, right there. Well, if we walk around in our lives later on as adults or even teenagers, whatever it is, and it's my fault and I'm bad, how do we expect to feel well within ourselves? So we can't, right? Mm. So imagine that happens once, but then what happens if those kind of events happen more and more and more? And then the nervous system gets locked in and we get what we call a very rigid nervous system and a very rigid belief systems.
Okay.
So that's what trauma does.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions at this juncture, if you may have. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's good to hear where all this began, because I personally didn't know that. So it's fascinating to me that, firstly, how the woman discovered it while she was on her walk. That's so interesting. And that this has gone forward and has helped many, many people, and that it will continue to help people. And I think my question to you would be, okay, if someone has got a trauma, such as say their long-term relationship of 5 years has decided to leave, and they already have a history of abandonment, and now they are just wiped out mentally and emotionally. They can't go to work because they can't eat, they can't sleep. They've been so traumatized by the breakup that they can't function to do the basics. What would you do with that person in that first week?
Look, it's very hard to do processing, in that phase. In that phase, it's kind of like you need a lot of downtime to let the nervous system settle, right? Like just a lot of self-care. If they have family and friends, like real downtime, unplug from doing too much if the person can. It really is about like the nervous system needs a timeout.
Yeah.
Because when you look at what does trauma do, it depletes the adrenals, right? So let's just talk about why that person, let's say maybe in that state, right? One is the 5-year relationship, right? But there's a history here, right? So it's not just then, right? We have a history in our culture. People are so depleted due to undealt with traumas and issues. So what's happening is that if the nervous system hasn't had time to repair, it's continuously leaking inflammatory markers and adrenal cortisol, right? So that's going on. Well, what does that do to the body? That continues to tell the body that we're still in a heightened state, even if we're not, right? So it's like it's a vicious perpetual motion machine going on. So what we need, all of us, including that girl, is so much healing on the nervous system level, so much. And in my meditation courses and my breathwork courses, we spend 6 months, a year or more simply learning how to calm down. So much of my work with people in psychotherapy is yes, there's some dialogue, but like, no, we need to like calm down. We need to dial it down from 10 to 7 to 6 to 5, like dial it down. If the person is not dialing it down, there, no matter how much talk therapy we're going to do, it's not going to do it, right? So for that woman, that man, they need time to dial it down and then begin the deeper somatic trauma work, right? And then, you know, back to your question of EMDR, what EMDR does, it creates, it's a method that creates a hypnogenic state. It's very interesting. So there's a part of the brain called the default mode network, right? It's basically your operating system. And it's called the default because it's basically it goes to what we believe and think automatically. It's a default. So when you start up your computer, right, there's a default operating system that it goes to no matter what you do. It just goes there. So we're operating all day long from that default mode network. So it's not that we have a lot of choice. It's simply just operating, right? EMDR helps that default mode network calm down to get to the underlying issues and belief systems, especially those belief systems about self. And it's there that the healing starts to happen. So what do? That little girl comes to therapy when she's an adult. We're going to use this methodology where we're going to have her revisit the trauma. And this method is going to put her in a slightly hypnogenic state where she can then step away from the emotions and recognize that she wasn't at fault. The whole point of the EMDR is to help to recognize who I really am in that moment. And what we realize most of the time is that I didn't create that and it's not my fault. And that's the most healing aspect of EMDR or of any therapy, is to realize, wow, my father was the one who was the issue, not me. And then what happens then in the future when the memory comes up, now it changes. Now it's no longer charged. And it's like a memory, but you know, it doesn't hold us.
Yeah. That's great. Do you think most traumas, as in anxiety, things that cause depression, brokenheartedness, can you let's say heal them completely, or do you just dramatically reduce the impact?
You know, it's interesting when you say healing completely, right? I want to know, what does that mean? Let's say
it means that you no longer have the trigger into, say, abandonment or the fear of abandonment, because sometimes it's not even there, it's not even present, it's just the fear of it is worse than the actual thing. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
So a couple of things. Can a person learn and understand who they really were during these traumatic experiences? Absolutely. Meaning a redefinition of the I am within them. Absolutely. That's the whole that's the whole point. That's going to happen. Number two, triggers are still going to come up for the rest of our lives because of the default mode network. The difference is going to be is how often they arise, how intensely they arise, and how quickly they resolve.
Okay.
So let's say I was bit by a dog as a child, and later on in my life, somebody will say, what does complete healing mean? Does it mean that I'm not going to have fear when I meet a dog? No, that doesn't mean that. No, it just may mean I have fear of the dog, but I'm still going to go pet the dog if I want to.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not, healing doesn't mean a non-arising of the trigger. It means I know how to work with the trigger and how to put it in its right place. That's what that means.
Which sounds like you have time to think rather than just go on automatic pilot and react.
That's the whole point of EMDR, good psychotherapy, meditation, breath work. What that does is now we develop such a strong mindfulness that when the default mode network gets triggered,
Yeah.
the mindfulness is so strong, we just don't follow the historical ways that we would follow that trigger in the past, right? Now it's like, here comes the anxiety. Here's the dog.
Yeah.
Checking out the dog, talk to the owner, friendly, good to go. Pet the dog, anxiety is still there. It doesn't mean it's gone. The nervous system is still operating because it doesn't know if the dog is going to bite or not. The nervous system is just basically telling you, hey, look, you got bit before, so check this situation out, right? So there's a healthy part to it. The unhealthy part about it would be that it's too limiting and generalized all the time, right? So if I recognize like, hey, there's no problem to be careful with a new dog, that I don't have to look at it as a bad trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a relationship with the brokenheartedness, you start to get to know someone new, maybe 6 or 8 months down the track, and then the triggers come up, often after the honeymoon period is over.
Correct.
So same principle applies for, like the dog?
Exactly. So the person would say, okay, first they would have to really understand abandonment, right? So I really want to talk about abandonment in a way that people don't usually talk about it, right? Everybody frames abandonment as the fear that it's the fear that the other person is going to leave, right? That's not the issue.
And take the love away.
That's not the issue. That's a secondary issue. The first issue is, I believe I am not worthy for people to stay and to love me.
Okay. Yeah.
If I didn't have that belief, I wouldn't have a fear of abandonment. You understand?
I do. I also think that there's the belief that love is over there in the other person and that you don't have any here. That's another issue.
But that still begins with a fundamental core belief about myself. See, everything begins with the way that I hold and experience myself.
Yes.
So if I believe that I am not worthy of love, I'm going to look for every sign that proves to me that that's the case.
Yeah.
So the work with someone with what we say is abandonment issues is to take a look at where the trauma was, where they learned that they're not lovable.
Yeah.
Shift that, and then they won't have a fear of abandonment.
Yeah, I see. In your experience, how successful is that for people?
It can be very successful because the person, as long as a person stays long enough, right?
Yes.
In therapy, it can take a while. I mean, with some people it's faster, with some people it's longer. I mean, right?
Yeah.
And because sometimes it's longer due to the extent of the trauma, one, and sometimes people unconsciously want to hold on to that negative perception about themselves. And I know that sounds crazy, but some of us get very latched onto it. And so that could be difficult.
What's the gain, do you think, of doing that?
The gain is I don't have to, I believe that I'm potentially protecting myself from re-experiencing the uncomfortableness of abandonment.
Okay.
So unconsciously, it's a protective mechanism. One, the other one is this. It also allows me to go into relationships, into ones that are going to abandon me, because then I'm going to seek ones that abandon me to prove to me that I'm actually not worthy of the love. So, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit crazy, because we go like, why would you do that? Because maybe, you know, in one of these relationships, I will find somebody will actually stay long enough to convince me that I'm lovable. But the thing is this, I'm going to keep choosing people who are going to abandon me. So nobody's going to actually stay.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It's crazy. It's so self-fulfilling.
Yes.
You know, it all comes down to how we experience ourselves.
Mm.
And, you know, another analogy, right? This will help everybody. So let's say there's a playground and there's a bunch of kids in the playground and I want to go to the playground, metaphoric playground, right? So what we all learn is this. We all learn in our families that we need to be something, wear something, look like something, acquire certain accolades in order to be loved, right? We all learned that we will be loved if X, Y, and Z, right? So you have to be a good little girl. You have to be a smart little boy. You have to be an athletic little girl. You have to be a jockey little boy. Like whatever it may be, pick your favorite, you know, Baskin Robbins du jour of what you should be, right? So what happens is this: we go to the playground and there's a metaphoric being standing at the playground and it says, here's your jacket, okay? And you're gonna wear this jacket to go play in the playground. This jacket is gonna cover up who you really are because you're not allowed to be who you are. You must wear this jacket when you go interact with everyone. You need to appear as though you're the good little quiet little girl who basically gets along and gives everybody your toys. Now go to the playground. And that's what we learn. We learn that we must not be authentically ourselves in life. Therefore, anxiety and depression are the two sides of the seesaw of not being authentically ourselves.
Do you think, looking at each generation, because if you look back at the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, as we're moving along, do you think that is still as concentrated as it was then?
It's the human condition. It's been this way from the beginning.
Okay, so you don't think it's eased off? Like, is it the family that's the main
look at our
influence?
culture. Look at our culture. Let's take United States culture at the moment. Look at all the craziness that's going on around gender identity and every form of trying to self-identify oneself down to the most narrowest definition of whatever I am is there. I am not this, I am that. There is so much tension and so much war going on internally, externally about trying to find the exact, precise identification, right?
Yeah.
Why? And we're thinking it's better than before? No, the reason for that is not because we're getting closer to who I am. It's not that. Because even the people who finally find and fight for that particular identification, whatever that may be, and you really talk to them, do they feel quietly in a room away from everybody? Does that make them feel whole all of a sudden? And they know, are they free of depression and anxiety at that point? No. So therefore, to me, the modern time is not a panacea. Actually, I think it's much more complicated, and people are striving much more for very discrete identifications, thinking they're going to finally feel whole. That has failed. That has failed.
Yeah.
In a big way. And I don't care. This is not a dialogue of, do I care if people are trying to find out, you know, whatever definitions they want. That doesn't matter to me. The question is this: is that fundamentally bringing me a deep sense of inner peace and wholeness? That's all I care about.
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, good for you. Then you won't have any anxiety and depression.
Yes.
If you're still suffering from anxiety and depression, you must ask, well, why didn't that work?
Yeah.
Because it's still another jacket, you see. What we've done now is that in the past, right? Let's say historically, you have to wear the jacket of the family like this. You got a blue jacket and you got to wear the blue jacket, right? Let's say 1940s, 50s, right? 1960s, like, fuck that. I'm going to wear my multicolor, every color jacket. Now in the 220s, we're like, not only every color, but specifically this color, this shade, this pixel of the color right there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where we are in that scheme of sort of say social, but that's still wearing a jacket at the entrance of the playground. I want to go into the playground not wearing any jacket.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, inwardly whole and at peace with myself. Then I don't need to fight with the world to get their permission, and I don't need to fight with anyone for my definition. That's over. That battle is over.
And looking for reassurance about it.
Well, that's when you ask me that. We are at a time where the youngsters are desperate for reassurance from the outside world.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, are we in a better time frame then?
It's like it's just changed shape, isn't it?
That's all it did. That's all it did. It just morphed shapes, and still as desperate as we have always been as human beings. And that's why I want to talk about the human condition. Human beings are desperate for external validation to feel inwardly whole. And that's never going to work. It never has worked. No.
It's funny, I remember when I got rid of all social media except for YouTube, I remember thinking, social media is such a poison and all this stuff. And I thought, hang on a minute. Social media is just the magnifying glass.
That's all. It exposes the underbelly
of what was there in the first place.
Correct. And it magnifies it even more, and probably reinforces it, because if you look at social media, what goes on is the endless chase of confirmation, validation of my life, my experience of myself. That's all it is.
Yeah. And trying to prove to others. Yeah. Okay. So this brings me to the breath work and the meditation. So can you tell us a bit about how that part of what you do actually assists this that we've been talking about?
I'm going to say some things that are going to be seem like very definitive things, right? And because it comes from my own experience, so I'm going to say them from my own work as a therapist. I couldn't imagine being a therapist without the somatic work of breath work and meditation as the foundation. I couldn't imagine how far a person can actually progress onto the path of awakening and wholeness. It's unimaginable to me.
Yeah.
And so Siddhartha, thank goodness, 2,500 years ago, was so curious about the internal process of suffering and freedom that 2,500 years later, we are still appreciating the depths of what the view and clarity and wisdom of what it means to look inside and understand oneself, supported by the methods of breath work and meditation. So there's three aspects here. Meditation is the method, and the breath work is the method to do the inner exploration.
Yeah.
That exploration develops wisdom and clarity. So we combine those three together to be able to understand what's happening. And that's what Siddhartha, the Buddha, left for us as a legacy. And for me, when I'm working with someone, and most of my students end up taking meditation courses with me. It's amazing, right? And they learn how to properly meditate. They learn how to properly do the breath work practices. And that allows them to calm the nervous system, to catch themselves in moments of being triggered, apply methods that help to see clearly and then to respond effectively right there.
Yeah.
Right. So it's essential.
Yes.
And the mindfulness movement, which is now so huge in the world, right? But my crusade, if I should say it, is to try to teach meditation effectively. And there's a lot of meditation that's being taught now that I think scares people, misguides them, and they don't really understand it. They try it and they run away. And that is due to the fact that either it's being taught in a very traditional way that's using the traditional language and hasn't been yet brought to the Western mind. And that's a problem. And that's a problem, right? And two, it has to be taught with some understanding of neuropsychology and neurobiology, because we're Westerners and we like that, to understand that and to know that, right? And number three, it has to have a particular language and a methodology that's being guided by someone week to week to hold your hand to answer those kind of questions. Because if you go to a weekend workshop and then go try to do it by yourself, I guarantee you 97% of the people are going to stop doing it because they're going to get lost. And if you read books, it just doesn't do it. You have to study with a experienced meditation teacher. That's the only way you're really going to learn how to meditate properly. And everyone can meditate, everyone. There is no human being that cannot meditate. No, meditation is not about stopping thinking. It has nothing to do with that. I don't care if you have ADHD and no ADHD, DDD, FDAD, boo, 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 whatever you have, it doesn't really matter. Everyone can learn to meditate.
Yeah.
That's it. And everyone can learn how to use breathwork practices. It's not religious. It's not hokey pokey. It doesn't ask you to conform to belief. You can keep your religions, your philosophies exactly as you want. No religious, no philosophies. Meditation and breathwork simply is to understand yourself.
So when you are working with people on teaching them about meditation and breath work, do they often come to you with something, a trauma to begin with, and then this is the path that they go down?
I think most people who walk into therapy may not say to you, "Hey, I'm walking in specifically for a trauma," right? That'll be a certain percentage of people. Most people will come in like, "I have relationship issues."
Yeah.
Like if you told me like the number one thing that what gets a person into therapy will be, "I've got some relationship issues going on," right?
Yeah.
That'll be like 70% of the people, the reason the person walks into therapy. The other 30 it'll be like depression, anxiety, I lost my job, or maybe in addictions. Do you know what I mean? Some addictions that are cover-ups for trauma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do some people walk in with trauma, like specifically? Yeah, there'll be a person who'll be like, look, I've done some therapy before. I got this trauma. I want to work on that. Great. And then we also have what I call the single incident traumas. For example, somebody gets into a car accident, and then they're afraid to go driving again. EMDR. I've had women who've had labor traumas.
Okay.
And they need some EMDR with that. Or somebody gets and they're sitting in their house and a tree falls in to their house and almost kills them. They come in and they want to do some EMDR. I mean, you know what I mean? Like we call them single incident traumas, right?
Okay.
And which for some people, they just go on living. They're fine with that. And for some people, they get stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're on an airplane and it gets turbulent and they never want to fly again. Right? Single incident traumas.
Okay. Fantastic. Such good information. And really, at the end of the day, it's about getting relief and getting to the place where you are not stuck. You're not stuck on that thing anymore, and you can move past it, to have the relationship, to get on the plane, to pat the dog, whatever it is.
Here's the thing, what I would say about all of this, as you say, relief, is that I, and I don't mean Alex, individual, through support and help, can get relief. You see, the thing is, relief is possible. That's really important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're really alive at a time where therapy has developed, neuroscience has developed. So we have such a deeper, much understanding. We have newer methods now that have never existed before. We have medications, both traditional and holistic medications that are available now. You know, we have blood work that could assess. We have new genetic testings that actually takes a look at which psychiatric medications will work for you and not work for you. The days of just prescribing nilly-willy are actually going to be gone in the next 10, 20 years. So therefore, you know, we can. The thing is, we got to find the right practitioners and make a commitment. Make a commitment.
Yeah.
So
that's wonderful. That's really, I think giving people hope like that is such a wonderful thing, because some people have been going around and around and around the same wheel.
It is
just stuck thinking there's something wrong with them.
No, I mean, sometimes I think it's, look, like anything, like, you know, you go get a massage and, you know, with one person, they heal your back, and another 30 people you went to, it just didn't work. I mean, you know, like, and those massage people, they helped other people that didn't help you. Like, so we never know, you know, it's easy to point a finger and say, because I may be able to help one person and another person not, and that other person, somebody else is like, hey, I helped you, but I didn't help you. You know what I mean? So it's very hard, you know, to know. But what I say is, don't give up. Keep trying, keep asking, keep seeking. There'll be someone for you that will be able to guide you. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Excellent.
So,
Alex, thank you. That's been really informative. And I'm going to put the links to where people can find you.
Sure.
And different bits and pieces, whether it's social media or website. So if
it's just my website, really simple.
Just your website? Nice and easy. Okay, great.
Easy.
Nice and easy. I'll put the link down below.
Thank
Do you want to say any last words before we go?
Being alive is a mystery. And we all have the privilege to heal and to live our full potential.
Yeah.
So I aspire that for everyone.
Nice. Yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope that you also learned something, and hopefully something put your interest to go and explore and instill a bit of hope and the possibility of you being able to dissolve or heal or let go of, whatever words you prefer to use, whatever it is you're currently going through. So I'm going to say, see you later. See you in the next YouTube. Thank you, Alex. Alex, stay in the room. You and I can say bye in private. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.